Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey, everyone. Hey, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. And, we have a great guest on. Her name is Nicole Majik. She's an accomplished leadership and empowering strategist. If I can say it. It's strategist, right? If we can get that correctly.
Yes.
You have a background in biology, chemistry, metaphysics, financing. Wow. You have a lot on here. Let's see here. Your expertise has been showcased throughout various media platforms, including radio, TV, local TV appearances, international conferences, keynotes, Travel Channel's Greatest Mystery, Smithsonian. He was recently featured in Jeff Hayes' films, upcoming release, Hacking Happiness, and that's slated for early 2024. Is that out yet?
It was just released April of 2024.
Oh,
year.
nice. So that just happened.
Yes.
You're also a Contactee experiencer, and let's see, you have had 2 near-death experiences, and the last one was a shared NDE. So I am very thankful that you come on here with us tonight. And please, not sure where you want to start, but give everybody a little bit about who you are.
Well, I used to be a chemist. I actually almost died from mercury poisoning. So that's how I left chemistry, because a lot of people ask how I transitioned out of chemistry. I'm a mom of 4. I have 3 boys, 1 girl. 3 boys are all older and moved out of the house now. So it's me and my daughter. And yeah, let's just dive on in, because I help people really move out of their own way is basically what I do, is move people from resistance to resilience. And that's helping them become fearlessly authentic and get over their fears, and in a very quick and easy way.
Nicole, how long you've been doing that?
My business actually just turned 16 this year. So
wow,
it's been 16 years. Yeah.
Wow. And you help a lot of big people. I see. I was on your website and I was checking it out. I'm like, man, she's hooked up there. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Jim, you got anything you want to say?
No. Yeah. Let's just dive into the NDE, I guess.
Absolutely.
First NDE experience.
All right, Nicole, tell us a little bit about your first experience.
Yeah, the first big experience was I was actually driving home from my job in chemistry. So I worked in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the time, and I had to travel the Massachusetts Turnpike. So it was about rush hour traffic, because I got out of work an hour late for a project I was working on. And that would usually take about an hour and a half at least for me to get home. So we were very slow going on the highway, because there was a lot of weird stuff that was happening. It just felt like this static energy, before a storm, right? You kind of have that weird energy. It feels like something's going to happen. There's a little
Yeah.
static energy in the air, and
Like
maybe
the entire day, you noticed that, like from when you got up, or at a certain point, or
just when I was driving home.
oh,
So
okay.
once I was actually on the highway, it felt like that. It felt like we were only driving maybe 30 miles an hour tops. There was the static energy that took over, and I was looking down at like these two cars that were down in the ditch. One of them was smoking because there was something wrong with the car, and everybody was just what we call rubbernecking in this part of the woods, right? And
Mhm.
people were rubbernecking, and I looked. I just my attention got turned to what was happening on the other side of the highway. And when I turned and I looked, I saw this car, and everything went slow motion, almost like a frame by frame.
And that's interesting that so this is well before, anything actually happens to you physically. This is well prior to any impact or anything like that. And it's already something's happening, it's an altered state of consciousness.
Yeah, and it probably only took a few seconds. However, it felt like minutes. And in my mind, everything was happening at that frame by frame slow motion. And so it kind of went like this. I turned and I looked and I saw this woman, and there was impact to her car. So I saw the dent in her car door, the driver's side door. And I couldn't see her face because her hair was covering her face. And she had this beautiful black curly hair, and I could see the way that the sun was shining through her window, these like caramel highlights in her hair. And she was swaying from the impact and back and forth. And I was wondering what happened. So I had this whole conversation in my head. It was like I was in fast forward and everything else was in slow motion. And when I was asking myself, oh, what the heck happened to her door? Um, who hit her? Like, where is this car that hit her? And when I asked, where is this car? Then my focus was brought to the car it went up over the Jersey barrier, and the car was pointed right into my lap. So this guy that was in this car was screaming, and his face was all contorted from him screaming. And I looked up at him, and our eyes met for a moment, whatever that means, a moment. And I could see the terror in his eyes. And at that instant, I basically went into this space where I saw him landing right where my steering wheel was, his car flipping over on top of mine, the roof of my car crunching down on my neck, snapping my neck, killing me, and then I was dead. Then I was brought into this space where I saw my kids, and I sat down with each of my kids and a couple of people that were extremely close to me and my family.
So intermediate family that's already living,
Yes.
right?
And I had a whole conversation with them and said my goodbyes to each one individually. And then when that was done, I just remembered kind of taking this second and saying, okay, I'm ready. And then when I said, okay, I'm ready, this blanket of peace came over me. This love came over me. I could feel divine presence around me, all around me. And then everything just like faded out and went black. At that moment, the way that I describe it is I felt like the ball in a pinball machine and just got shot through like the tunnel. And I could see the shapes and the colors and all of that, the light.
The tunnel had different colors and stuff in it.
Different geometric shapes and different like lights or light patterns, I should say. And as I shot through this thing, then all of a sudden I came to, but I was still in my car, and I was holding onto my steering wheel. And when I came through, as I came through, I took this deep breath, like that. And like I was being held underwater. And then all of a sudden you get pulled up out of the water, and you like that breath that right before you die, if you don't breathe, forget it. And so that gasping breath. And then immediately my brain kicked into high gear, and I was like, oh my God, I almost just died. And I was like yelling this out loud to myself. Oh my God, I almost just died. And then I looked in my rearview mirror to see like what happened, because that guy was landing in my lap, no doubt. And then I said, oh my God, I should have been dead. And then I'm looking around saying, oh God, am I dead? Because there are no cars in front of me, no cars behind me, no cars on the opposite side on the highway during rush hour traffic on the Massachusetts Turnpike. So if you know anything about that, that just does not happen. That is not a case.
It does not happen at any point in the day.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But especially in rush hour traffic when it's bumper to bumper and you're barely moving. And then all of a sudden I see this one lone car on the other side of the highway, and I get freaked out because I'm like, oh my God. And kind of the joke that I'll say is, what side of the highway am I on? This highway to heaven or the highway to hell? And I just immediately reacted. And that reaction was to call my mother. And my family is very intuitive. So when I called my mom, my mom answered the phone like, oh my God, Nikki, are you okay? I was just praying for you. And she's talking super fast. I usually pray for you in the morning. And she just went into this whole thing about her routine and when she prays for everybody and all that. But then she felt like she needed to pray for me in that instant. And I was like, Mom, can you just shut up for a minute? I'm like, am I dead? And she's like, what? No, you're not dead. You're talking to me on the phone. What are you talking about? And I was just in this state of maybe shock or something, because I could not put together what happened, because I was in a completely different place on the highway. And I did know where it happened. And I did look, because there was a certain bridge that was nearby when I came to, that I recognized. And I took the distance between on a different day going back and forth to work. And it was 2.5 miles away, a little over that.
And are you like on the road, on the shoulder, or was the car stopped? And mind you, I think what something we shouldn't leave out here is everything is totally intact, right? You're fine.
Yes.
The car is not impacted. Everything is bizarrely just normal. Except your state of mind. You're still in a kind of like adrenaline sort of fueled state, I guess.
And the fact that nothing made sense, that there were no cars on the highway. Yeah, everything was intact. I was intact. The car was intact. I was driving. I was still in the same lane that I was in. But if I back up a little bit, before that all happened, I was almost a year, or about a year, with undiagnosed postpartum depression. And it turned into this obsession with death and fantasizing about death, where I would think about it all day long. Like, how can I exit? How can I exit? And how could it, like, just, it was almost like my entire world inside my head was 1,000 Ways to Die TV show. But I was dying in all these different cases. And then, so I'd fantasize about it a little bit. And then I would just stop and then say, just hold on a little bit longer, because my kids needed me. Because at that time I had 3 little boys. And when this happened, it completely took away all of that, all of the depression, every last bit of it. So, and in its replace, it was replaced with this fervor for life.
And did you notice this change like immediately on the road there? Like something's different mentally here with your thought processes.
I think it was it solidified a little bit more because I was still kind of in shock and trying to figure out what actually happened.
Mm.
And then, after I talked to my mom, I was married at the time, so I had called my husband, and I was telling him, and he was like, "You're just exaggerating, and that's not, you're just exaggerating." And I was like, "If you know me, I am that person that tries to pinpoint every real detail and not exaggerate."
Mm-hmm.
Just because of how I grew up, and there was an exaggerator in the family that I just didn't want to be like. So when I got home, I think more so the awareness kind of sunk in when I walked up into my house. I opened the door, and one of my sons would always greet me at the door. So he came over and just grabbed me, and I grabbed him, and I think I probably anaconda gripped him because I just grabbed this kid, and I was like, "I love you so much. I love you so." Like I had so much of this love energy that was like wanting to exude out of me and get out of me or be shared or whatever you want to say, that I grabbed him and just kept like, "I love you so much. I love you so much." I just had this appreciation and gratitude and this love. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, like this is different. This feels so different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nicole, it sounds like to me, you pictured all this happening, but yet you wasn't there. Correct? It was like a time slip or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really a weird thing because it took a long time before things really made sense. So I kind of like pieced together things after it happened as best as I could, and trying to gather some information. But it really wasn't until a handful of years ago that I was watching Interstellar, and something clicked when I was watching Interstellar. And I was like, "Oh my God, it completely makes all the sense." And the pieces that I was using as filler pieces, like I thought that I heard about a walk-in experience, so I thought maybe it was that. And I realized it really wasn't that. And it was something completely different. If you could get in my head and understand what I understood with all that, because there's a lot of stuff that downloads in that space and time, and things just don't unlock until the right timing. And it's like this, just like a flood of information comes all at once. And what I recognize now is it wasn't like a higher self just came in at a pivotal time, because things were very different in some cases, like being on that highway with no cars during rush hour traffic, and then a whole bunch of anomalies that happened afterwards that we can talk about. But in that moment when I saw everything happening and saw this death, I think that I actually died that way, but then I was transported to another dimension where now that consciousness merged with another part of me that needed something, where if you want to call that the walk-in experience, you can, if that's how you need to wrap your head around it. But I really feel like that consciousness, because that was a death occurrence, and the energy of that me came into this other dimension to bring knowledge and awareness and information so that I could continue to do what I was doing in my purpose, because that's what I was following. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I just want to sort of reframe this a certain way, because that would seem probably really implausible to some people that you were transported to another dimension. But during an NDE anyway, I mean, in any case of an NDE, you're outside the body. Your consciousness is somewhere else, and then you're put back into the body. You're totally somewhere else on a higher dimension or whatever it is. and then you're put back into the body. So it's not completely far-fetched that you were put back in. If we're to believe, that there are parallel dimensions, it's definitely not far-fetched, and it's not, out of the realm of physics, of reality, to really, in my opinion, that you could have been put back into an identical you on a parallel dimensional plane.
Right. Because that 2.5 miles difference, had I left a little bit early or did something different or whatever that was, could have given me that 2.5 mile space very easily.
So wait a minute. The 2.5 mile, if you would have deviated from that 2.5 miles, you wouldn't have seen this.
So what I was saying is, like, because there was 2.5 miles between where this incident happened and where I came through the tunnel.
Okay.
Right? Had I, maybe in another dimension, left a few minutes earlier, gotten on the highway, missed all of that thing instead of being involved in it, I would have been somewhere else on that highway.
Yes.
Right? So it's very plausible that in that other reality that I was in a different part of the highway.
Yes. Okay.
Can we rewind a little bit back to the out-of-body state and just kind of comb through this a little bit more slowly? So the first part of it, like you're just immediately, were you surprised all of a sudden just encountering your living family in a non-physical realm? Like, do you remember anything about your state of awareness, when you're there? Like, are you sort of in the same sort of state of consciousness as in normal life? Is something different? Because I remember you said, okay, I'm ready. As if you had some kind of idea or something about the process that was about to occur, or some part of you did. Is there any extra detail, in that as to what you remember? Like, do you think do you remember, do you have full recollection of the whole out-of-body experience, or do you think you just remember pieces of the out-of-body experience? Could there be more to that experience that you don't consciously remember?
That's a good question, because what I remember from that is it was almost like I went from looking at this guy and meeting his eyes and seeing him in this terrified state into this complete state of peace and calm. So a complete different energy shift. That energy was, so I didn't feel like I was really in a body at that time. It was just energy. And
so that's one difference there. You don't feel like you have a body, there's a difference there with that.
Yeah.
But go on. Yeah.
So it wasn't the same type of consciousness that you would recognize in the physical body, in your mind. It was more of this you're just this energy. And I was connecting with the energy of each of my kids. So it wasn't really even like they were there in the physical. It was like I sensed them there in a physical way, sort of, but I had this whole conversation with them like it was on a telepathic, energetic situation.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was done, it was like, okay, those are the people that I needed to have peace with or something. And then, yeah, I'm ready. And that was just a knowing. There wasn't anything like, it wasn't like somebody was standing there waiting for me, like, take my hand, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I did this thing. Okay, I'm ready. And I knew that I was leaving, but it was just a knowing that, okay, we're done here. And I'm stepping into whatever's next.
Did it feel like a goodbye to those children at all, or was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It did. Have you ever seen the show Constellation on Apple TV? Kind of about the Mandela effect. It's a recent one.
I don't know if I saw that one. I've seen some other Mandela effects because I've had some massive Mandela effects happen after this. Yeah.
Right. Well, I won't go into the show. I would recommend that, though. That's
Okay.
a pretty good sort of rendering of the Mandela effect. So do you think you were saying bye to those kids because you were, in fact, leaving those kids, and the kids that you have now aren't really technically the same children? I mean, they're maybe the same energy source, the same soul, but a different sort of aspect of that over soul or higher self. Or what do you think is the deal with that?
I'm not sure what the deal is with that. I can look at it in several different ways where it may be just that. I think what you just put up there, that connection with mother to children. Sometimes people send off that energy and telepathic vibe of, whatever. So there could be that. There's also and more of a selfish sense, I guess you could say, is remembering that was a key element to me piecing together what really might have happened with the dimensional shift, because that piece comes up over and over again when I think about when people leave and we feel the contact of that spiritual energy of our past loved one appear to us. And what I recognized was, after the whole interstellar thing and like just those bits came to light in my head, that a friend of mine actually asked me, like, well, how is it that I can see and feel, my parents around? And I was like, oh, that's simple. It was like right in that moment, all of a sudden, like all this stuff unfolded. And I just I'm listening to myself and like teaching myself as words are coming out of my mouth uncontrollably. And it was, oh, that's simple. Because when we move into another dimension after we pass away, if you have enough awareness, you can remember that you were in another dimension, and you have this sense that you can remember the people that you supposedly left behind, right? I can give my kids messages right now. I can deliver a message and it can appear as a message from the other side, because when there is no time, everything is always happening at the same time. So I can tell my kids what a great job that they're doing, or, how proud I am of them, or how happy I am, how okay I am now, and have that message delivered and just know that it gets delivered because I wished it.
Mm-hmm. In what sense do you think it is being delivered, kind of on a psychic level, to their higher selves? Maybe they're not sort of consciously aware of it, their lower self, but it is sort of registered in the higher parts of their being somehow.
Yeah, so it could end up being, whatever form that they have attached to me, right? So some people see cardinals or butterflies or change or whatever it is. I think that whatever that form is, or they might just feel my presence. So I think there's different ways in which it will show up, as long as I will that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember to do that quite frequently, because, for a mom to leave 3 kids behind, in this reality, I have a daughter too. So I have 4 kids.
Right. So I'm thinking of Constellation and the woman who sort of goes through this. She comes back from space. There's an incident in space, and she doesn't realize it until she gets back that her reality is different, and she's actually in a different dimension. Her child notices that there's something different, slightly different about her mother. And I don't know if that would be accurate in real life or not, but maybe what do you think about that? And also, what were some of the changes that you noticed that seemed to, gradually sort of indicate to you that your reality was different somehow?
Yeah. So, every time we go through a growth or, the inner alchemy of transformation, we have a series of things that happens. When I came back or whatever, when, moving on in life, it was okay. I felt very different in my body. So there was definitely an energy shift that I was like, okay, why do I feel so weird? That's probably how I can describe it best, is I just didn't feel myself 100%. So I am myself. I felt partially myself, but I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And so there was, this constant thinking about it for a little while of like, how do I explain this? And can I say anything to anyone? Because this is craziness. And then there was this existential crisis that basically happened. So right when we're growing and transitioning, we go through a couple of different iterations of dark night of the soul. So that you have this dark night of the soul that you have an awakening and you shift out of. So I think all that happens during that near-death experience, which then brought me to that growth place, which is now, okay, here's the existential crisis. Who really are you? So it took me into that place of who am I and what am I doing here? And what is this? How do I explain this? And that's, I had gone on a retreat, and there was a lot that was going on in my marriage, where there was a lot of heavy emotional stress, and then the stress to be the provider of the entire family that was happening. So, and shifting into that mode and the existential crisis, it was okay. Like, what am I doing here? And how am I going to navigate all of this? And who am I? And what am I going to do next? So I went through a bunch of different things, like just trying to settle into my skin, because I had this amplification of intuitive hits, of facilitating healing energies, and all of that never stopped. And then
Amplification meaning prior to this experience, you were already psychic, just to establish that, and
yeah,
an amplification that was permanent after this point.
yes.
So
So and then it's just growing into more of that, and it just, every year that goes by, it feels like it amplifies more and more and more with my growth. So as long as I'm growing, it's growing. And I was trying to figure out what it meant for me, because I couldn't figure out what it meant for anyone else before I knew what it meant for me. And then settling into, okay, this is happening, and a huge conflict with how I grew up and how I was, the embarrassment of the family, because I had this intuitive nature, or I said things that I shouldn't say, or I knew things that I shouldn't know, and just, making things up. But guess what? They're true. And guess what? Yes, they happened. Or guess what? They're going to happen. And then we find out, yes, they happened. So all of this stuff, and like the astral projection since I was a little kid, now it was all coming together in a sense of, all right, this is undeniable. And I kept seeing visions, very vivid visions, and hearing a lot of information that I didn't even know existed. So I would look things up historically and energetically and spiritually, like all these things would come together. Thank God for the internet by then, because I'd look things up, and some of the stuff I didn't even know how to spell at certain times, because they're wacky words. And And then I'd see that's exactly what I saw. Right.
And so you're in contact with something at this point.
Yes.
And it's all enhanced. Now, when you say visions, do you mean, I always have to sort of establish this. Do you mean mind's eye visions that when you're walking around, your awake, conscious eyes are open, there's a kind of flash, like you see it, like when you imagine something in your mind, a kind of imagery projected like that? Or do you mean meditative visions where you're in like a lower brainwave state and you start to see imagery, as you get into the kind of hypnagogic state?
Yeah. So yes, on all
Both,
accounts. I
both types of
I
vision.
would meditate, and I would see a lot in my meditations. I also had full-on visions when I was wide awake. I would see flashes of things and be submerged in them. Some of them I still don't even know what they mean to this day. So I have no idea if they were past, present at the time, or supposed to be future things. I don't know, because they always were weird, and they were around like more crime scene type of stuff, which I don't know. I don't know anything about anything of what happened with any of the stuff that I saw in those instances. But the other stuff that I saw was, meditative, and also like right on the verge of astral projection. There was a time when a friend of mine was trying to get pregnant, and she was having some issues. So she was going through like different rounds of IVF, right? Treatments and all this. And she was getting really, really discouraged. And then all of a sudden one night, and I wasn't even thinking about her, but I came out of my body, and I turned around, and I went through my wall. And when I went through the wall, I went into her space, and I was looking into a nursery, and I could see that she was going to have twins. One was going to be a boy and one was going to be a girl. And so I kind of just looked around, and I knew. And once I knew, I came back into my body, and I couldn't call her because it was the middle of the night. But I called her the next day, and I was like, hey, I have good news for you. You're going to have a boy and a girl, twins. One boy, one girl, twins. And I told her what happened, and she was like, oh, come on. And then I said, no, mark my words. You're going to get pregnant, and this is going to happen. And then she's like, yeah, okay. So she was resisting, and I just said, fine, I'm just going to leave it out there because I know that's what's going to happen. And you just call me when I'm right. And then about 5 months later, she called me up and she said, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And I mean, we talked in between a lot anyway, but when she called up and said, I'm pregnant, finally. And I said, great. You're going to have twins. One's going to be a boy, one's going to be a girl. And she was like, really? Are you still hanging on to this? And I said, yep, I am. And then I said, well, call me back when you get your ultrasound done and tell me that I'm right. And then she called me back when she had that done. And she goes, I can't even believe this. I go, you got your ultrasound done. You're having a boy and a girl, twins, right? And she's like, yeah, I don't know how you knew this. I'm like, I don't know either, but it's so much fun. So it's just like stuff like that just happens. And like I'll see things in people, and like I have so many different stories about stuff that's in people, and just like helping to clear out pains and this and that, or changing people's lives dramatically with energy work.
So there is some kind of like purpose to it, because that's where I was going to go next. Like with in the case of just informing your friend that she was going to have twins. I was just wondering why, why would that happen, just in order to sort of inform her of that. Like, do you have a sense that there always is a purpose to every sort of vision you get, that there's some reason why you're being shown that?
I think so.
Um,
And
but
I
but
think
yet,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry, but yet you still have ones that seem kind of unresolvable, like there's some kind of crime, or you see sort of images of a crime taking place, and some of these never come into fruition. You never hear about, in the newspapers, of this crime taking place or something like that. And you're just left with a kind of mystery as to what you were shown that for.
Yeah, I've had some weird things happen when it comes to that. One of them, it has like extraterrestrial elements to it as well. So we could talk about that one if you want. I don't think I've ever mentioned it on a podcast ever.
Yeah,
It's
let's go.
very
Let's go into
strange. So to answer your question, I think yes. I think there's a purpose for all of it, and even those ones where I don't know what happened. Who am I to say that I won't find out even 10 years from now? I don't know. And looking back and saying, oh, okay, here's this thing, or I saw that, or whatever or maybe it was so far in the future that if something were to come up, then I'd be able to, step forward and say something. I don't know. So I just leave it there instead of dwelling on it.
right.
That took a lot of work around release and surrender, because, the mind wants to solve problems. And especially when you have a very active analytical side of the mind, at times that, when I worked in chemistry, it was analytical chemistry. So you're always solving problems. And, you want to do that for yourself and for other people too. So there's definitely a reason why. And maybe the reason for my friend in that particular case was she was getting really discouraged. Who knows where that could have gone had I not given her even that glimpse of like, hey, I know this is going to happen. So it instilled some level of hope. And then guess what? Then she got pregnant. And then she did have the twins.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that knowledge would have a lot of ramifications spiritually, energetically, in terms of, so yeah, I could definitely fathom why just that knowledge, could have been serviceable, in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Now, is there any kind of like, so you're receiving visions, meditative visions and mind's eye visions that are pertaining to these things. Is there also any telepathic communication simultaneous relative to these experiences as well, giving you some kind of info in addition to the visions?
Yes. I'm going to say yes. Like one of the visions, I actually saw like Ishtar coming up at me like in full regalia, but then she took me and like we're like up above the earth, and I was seeing these flares of lights, and it was like telepathically communicated about, being the beacon and sparking other beacons, and that's what we do, to let the lights come up. And when you see the lights go, it was very much, it's hard to bring back the information and then speak it in 3D terms because our vocabulary sucks and doesn't convey the right words or the right meanings, because you also feel it on a different dimensional level. So there's a lot of feeling that goes in, like feeling, knowing, that goes into that telepathic communication. So it was all this, like just being this beacon of light and message and sparking that in others. And that's, looking back now, I can say that's what I do with the work that I do. And even just being me, being out, somebody was on on the property in my complex not that long ago, maybe last week. And like, I didn't know this, but my boyfriend was out there talking to this person, and I went out to go outside as well. And he's talking to this person. And so I sat down talking to that person too. And turned out that this person had confided in him that, she wanted to kill herself. And I didn't know that when I went out, because they were already in a different part of a conversation. And she was clearly upset about something anyway, family stuff. And I heard, I'm like, this person she needs a hug, and she needs to feel supported and safe and loved. So I just interrupted right then and there. I'm like, hey, do you need a hug? And she just was startled a little bit. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I really do. Do that. And I gave her a hug, and I ended up talking to her and just reassuring her and saying the right words that she needed to hear, apparently, but just being me. So it wasn't, I was making anything up or telling her stuff that wasn't true. I was totally telling her things that were true, and feeling through her situation, and like finding, like, how does she need to be feeling supported here? And by the time our conversation was done, she had a huge smile on her face. When she went back in, she was like happy and completely changed, and thanking me and all of that. So it's just, being that beacon of light and just transferring that energy to people and raising people up, because it's entrainment, right? If you hold your vibration high and you can maintain it and keep it there, no matter what's happening around you with lower vibrations, people are going to entrain up. And even if they entrain up just a little bit beyond where they were, that's something better,
Right.
and a better experience than they had, so that they know that there's something else there. They know that there's a better reality in their future. They just have to choose it.
All right. Todd, do you have any thoughts here?
No, I'm very much enthralled in this. I have my notebook and my pen, and so no, this is amazing. I'm just trying to take it all in.
So I can tell you about one of these visions that I had. I have these weird, they're half dream state, but astral state as well. Because when I sleep, I actually, many times, I just hover over my body while I'm sleeping. So I'm half sleeping and just in that astral state. So I can actually see what's going on in my house.
That's interesting. That's many times, like many nights, you're like this throughout the night, just sort of consciously aware of what's going on in your room. That's
It's if there's an energetic pattern disruption, it signals me, and then astrally I can see in the direction where that disruption is, so I know what's happening. So if somebody gets up in the night and walks around, and if somebody wants to go make food in the middle of the night, I'll know.
And do you travel down there to the kitchen and check out things, or do you or like astral travel down there? I don't mean physical travel.
No, it actually is, like D Hoot just put in there. It is more of a remote viewing, because I'm still there. I'm still in my body. Well, not in my body, but hovering above my body. I have the awareness of, so I can put my energetic attention there and know what's going on, because I'll see it just by focusing on it. I don't have to project over there.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, go into that vision. Yeah, I'm interested to hear about that.
Okay, so this is really old. But it's
old. Now, is this pre-NDE or post-NDE?
This is post-NDE, but a matter of just probably, my NDA was in 2006. My daughter was born in 2009. So it was before my daughter was actually born. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was in the house that my ex-husband and I had built. So in this dream or vision, it was kind of like half and half. I had gone downstairs. I used to wake up very early to go to work. So I used to wake up at 3:50 a.m. to get ready. And I would be out of the door by 4:30 so I could be at work at 5:30. So it was like I was getting up, but I wasn't going to work. And I was standing at the sink looking out the little planter window. And I could see meteorites like falling from the sky, like pieces on fire falling from the sky and landing in at that old house. My backyard and a bunch of neighbors' backyards all kind of came together in the back. So it was like this open space. So these meteors were pieces were flying down. And I had called my friend in Ohio and I was like, I'm going out there. I'm going to collect some meteor pieces. Like, I'm going to do that. So in this dream, I did that. I went to go outside and I remembered going out there, and then there was like debris everywhere, some kind of debris all over the place. And there was this backhoe chewing up the backyards. And so there was all this activity that was happening around out there. And I was like, what the heck? So I grabbed 3 little meteor pieces and I hid it, because I looked down and I saw this picture of a man. I saw clearly what he looked like, and I saw his name, and it was some kind of military print, and the debris that was all over my backyard. And then there was this officer that was like, ma'am, you need to get back in the house immediately. You can't be out here. I'm like, this is my freaking backyard. What are you talking about? And as I'm looking at this guy and the name, I could see and feel and hear that I'm looking at this going, oh God, he knew too much. And he found something out that he wasn't supposed to find out. And because he knew too much, they killed him. So I was like, okay. So I just kind of took that name back, which I'll just keep to myself right now. And I've always been on the lookout for this name. And I felt like it was Special Forces, Air Force. After that, it was a very weird time, because whatever year that was, there was within right around the time that I had that dream, there was some kind of weird meteor showers going on. But I was looking up for things having to do with the military and these meteor showers and extraterrestrial stuff, because he had found out about extraterrestrial stuff, which is what was communicated to me. And so there's a lot more that comes from this. I'm just trying to figure out the pieces that I can say fully. And
there's parts of this that you don't want to share yet, or
yeah, so there's some parts that I just don't know about this whole thing. And so I'll share.
So you get the sense that this is something important, like this pertains to the real world. This wasn't per se something symbolic in nature, like there's implications in the real world.
Yeah, this person has communicated with me several times in, I'm going to say, spirit form, and directly to me, and also through another medium,
This
unexpectedly.
special forces person whose life was in danger because he found out too much.
Yes. Well, yes. His life was over because he knew too much. So it was like the debris that I was seeing was me seeing that he was shot down, and then it was supposed to be an accident. Okay. Or something,
Well, yeah.
maybe a malfunction or whatever the case was. It was an accident, supposedly. But there was also some things that had come up afterwards that were, he wanted me to tell his wife and his daughter what happened. And there was also something that I was supposed to tell the wife and the daughter regarding something that they have still.
That the wife and the daughter have still, like in their possession, that they don't know about.
Yes.
Now, so you did find out who this person was, or you did find him in real life? I mean, I know he's not around now, but you did sort of identify this person as someone who exists or existed.
This person, I'm pretty sure, I don't know. It's a name that is, it's uncommon, but common enough. It's common enough, but the credentials are not common. So there was other stuff that happened with that there's connections, not just in the US, but also Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere I saw, I'm trying to remember where it is, because I think there's also a New York connection, and there's also like police force connection in New York, and also in the, I'll just say in the middle of the nation. And and in the middle of the nation is where the connection is back to Canada. And there was a lot of ET and UFO sightings at the time that this meteor stuff was happening. And it was a weird, like, day to 2 days that I saw something come up where the government was looking for video footage that anybody had of the meteor shower in a certain area out in California. And then I couldn't find anything on it after that.
That's interesting. I've never heard anything like that.
And so this was back, like, it might have been after my daughter was born. It definitely wasn't after 2012.
So can we surmise that this wasn't a normal meteor shower? This wasn't even
I don't think it was a normal meteor shower at all. I don't think that, because I mean, we have the cyclical meteor showers, and we all know about those. And this was not that at all. And there were a lot of UFO sightings. And I have some friends out in California that would watch all that stuff too. And they would see them as well. So there were several different types of UFO sightings. So it wasn't just, one thing. It could be a book.
So whatever this was, if it wasn't a meteor shower, it was something large, I guess, that broke up. Does that, I mean...
Yeah, it could be.
I would think, yeah.
Yeah, and so this person, like, whatever spirit form, would contact me periodically for years after. I'm going to say 5 or 6 years afterwards. And one of them even was, I used to own a shop, and I had a medium come in who gave a gallery, and I had to say, that I was taking one thing, and I was like, told this guy, okay, no, that you can't come through. Like, this is for these people. This isn't for you, to come through on this information, because it was my shop that I was holding an event. And and she saw it too. She saw special ops,
So
aircraft,
another independent corroboration of this.
yeah. So, and I believe I know what the item is that
That the family has.
And
this is sensitive, this part of it, as to
that's the sensitive part, because I don't know who the family is. I don't know where to find them. I don't know anything. And, if there's the chance that, it can be communicated whenever that is, then I don't want to compromise that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And this, it's definitely sounds like it was covered up for sure. Yeah. And that would be why they want anyone that had videos, so they could quickly get rid of that. Yes, very fascinating. I didn't mean to, just my thoughts were coming.
No, not a problem. I mean, it's very weird. And some of the stuff is really hard to wrap your 3D brain around sometimes, because I was like, what the heck is this? And then this guy would show up at different, readings, or if I was doing mediumship readings at the time, like he'd show up. I'm like, go away right now. This isn't for you,
And yeah, that, to me, that's why I don't have a ton of questions coming out, because I want you to sit, and I want you to try to remember these things. This is, for our listeners and viewers, to get your perspective on these things that you've never talked about publicly before. So we are honored that you're doing this for us. So yes, take your time. Don't rush on our behalf here.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I mean, this is some serious intrigue, and this kind of sheds a light, onto some things that could be happening. Just this sort of, this person passed away and is contacting you. This is maybe not unusual. The people in this. Now, when you say shadow ops, or did you say special forces or shadow
forces?
Special forces. Do you think he was someone who was connected, while he was here, someone who was aware of, the spiritual reality and knew, was
I don't even know.
Part of some kind of black operations. You don't know that yet. Someone asked, have you tried to query him as to how to find the whereabouts of the family, or what happens when you ask him questions? Do you generally get responses, or what happens in that circumstance?
That's kind of, it's a weird thing, because I'll have like these rushes of energies, and I'll get information, like an information transference. I've asked about where do I find the family. I feel like they're more on this side. He might have been stationed out in or near California, like between Texas and California or something like that. But I don't know, because I know that he was stationed out there. Whatever he was doing, it was out there on that side. But I feel like maybe his family is more on this side, which is why I would be contacted. And maybe there's other people out there that have gotten contacted too. I don't know. It would be nice to know if somebody else did. If they had some pertinent piece of information that would say that they're also part of this. But I also feel like there was weird stuff that was happening too. Like some lady appeared at the shop that at the wellness center that I was doing some work at there, and
This is what
came
I
in
was
talking to me about Roswell, and I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And like, just she didn't have an appointment. She just showed up and starts talking to me about this when this guy was like giving me information and things. So I've had some weird encounters with some interesting people along the way because of this. And it's been quiet for a while now. So I don't know what that means either. You know, sometimes it's you just wait for stuff, and I don't know what it means if there's something that's supposed to come of it. Now,
So that's
and you did try reaching out, correct, to this whoever this was. You did try reaching out, asking where the family is. And what kind of response did you get? Or you know, none, or was it cryptic? Or
there's different ways. So when he would contact me, if I was by myself, the visions I would have would be very clear about people that might be involved. So I had actually contacted a friend of mine who knows a lot about different authorities. I'll just say that. And so I mentioned some things, and I mentioned names that I had gotten, and he knew those people personally, or knew of those people. Some of the other people knew of them in his reality. So there's that. When I was with other people, aside from the medium confirming that, yeah, this guy is Special Forces, Air Force, and like really is, you know, adamant about connecting with you. We kind of left it at that instead of going full on into it, because he's very strong sometimes in monopolizing the energies. But then when other people are around, because he came through, I used to do some table tipping at the old place, and he would come through and table tipping. So I'd have to like tell him, you know, you can't be monopolizing stuff that I'm doing for other people. So he would come through sometimes, but if there were other people around, so I ended up bringing some people that I trusted in to do a table tipping session so that I could get information. But I also feel that there's energies of other people that, you know, there was a particular instance or a person there that had like an overpowering energy to themselves. So I feel like there might have been like a little bit of a battle going on between projection of energy and the actual energy that he was bringing through. So I kind of had to piece through what actually made sense sitting with him in other visions. So I think I've cleared out some of the stuff that was more projection from somebody else versus what he was trying to say. So it's a tricky thing when sometimes other people get involved because it's a co-creation.
So have you noticed anything now? I know you said you had some sort of strange encounters with some people afterwards, but have you noticed anything like attention on you? Black helicopters, phone ringing in the middle of the night with some strange number, any kind of attempts to kind of intimidate you is where I'm getting at.
I've had some black helicopters over that house that I was at. I remember black helicopters when I was a little kid at one point, like super low. There were like 5 all at once at one time, super low. But after this happened, there were a few instances with some black helicopters. There was a lot of ET contact, like weird, like in the night stuff. Actually, my ex-husband one time, like he woke me up because he was freaked out because he's like, what the F was that? And I'm like, what? So he woke me up. So I'm like half awake. And I said, what? And he said, those lights. And I'm like, what lights? He's like, 2 little blue lights came flying over here on my side of the bed. And then when I looked at it, they went off into the corner and out. And I was half asleep. And I just went, oh, that's all right. It's just the aliens. So I was like half being like trying to be funny and half serious. And he's like, well, what the F? They should be on your side of the bed then. because, that was a thing. But I also felt very much in the astral realm, like taken out and brought places. So there were a lot of times where I've felt like I was doing these some kind of drills during my sleep, and I'd wake up completely exhausted and like doing these drills, and I had to get them right. So I had to get them right within a certain time frame and all that stuff. Another time there was the blue light room that I was brought into this blue light room. And another friend of mine had told me about it because I was like, what? I'm like, I was brought into this blue light room. Like, what the heck is this all about? And there's definitely some blue light rooms in connection with the My Labs. And the blue light is, helps to connect energies a little bit easier, better, quicker, faster.
Yeah, some of this is sounding a little bit reminiscent of what some of the super soldier experiencers that I've listened to talk about, training exercises going on in the astral, things like that.
Yeah, that happened for years while all this was happening, like all with this contact. And I was like, what the hell is this? Because it was exhausting, but it was like, and it was over and over and over again. It's like living this same thing and like getting it right. And once, going through these obstacles, that's what it was. It was like an obstacle course, and it had to be done exactly right. And it had to be done in time. And if you messed up, you started all over again. So I remember doing that, and it was exhausting.
So this is a real mystery here. Why don't we delve into the ET contact stuff?
Okay.
And unpack that a little bit. Does ET contact go back to childhood?
Yes.
Sightings in childhood or abduction events? Is there any, where do you want to start with that?
Okay, so I can tell you what I remember in my early childhood. Well, first of all, I remember stuff from when I was like 6 months old. I was told you shouldn't be able to remember all that stuff, but I remember sight, sound, sense, all of it. And the ET stuff, I remembered being outside. I'd see the UFOs in the sky moving around with my dad a lot. I would also see them by myself. I had one of those like high twin beds, so it was like right where the window was. So I'd be laying there and I'd put my pillow and just watch the stars. And I would call it watching the stars dance. But, now knowing what I know, I wasn't watching the stars dance, because I would talk to the stars. I'd be talking to those dancing stars and having full on conversations, and like just wanting to be not here.
Conversations, dialogues, or
Telepathic, right? So, and yes, back and forth. So it was like, some of that would be like, okay, why do I have to be here? And it would be because there's a purpose, whatever that is communicated into like a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, because there was a purpose. And it was about the lessons. Like I needed to learn these lessons, and I needed to observe, and I needed to, do things, and understand things, but I wouldn't understand them unless I toiled through them, basically. So I had to have these experiences.
how frequent is this? Like
When I was
st-
a kid,
yeah, like
it
seldom
was
or more than seldom?
more than seldom. It was pretty frequent. It was like that was what I did at night. Was I would lay down and I'd watch.
Daily basis or weekly basis, or
I'm going
like
to say not exactly daily, so it was probably a couple times a week. In my youth too, around that same age, I would come out astrally frequently. I'm going to say almost daily, especially in the night. And my mom would always talk about like the frequency in which I had flying dreams. I would talk to her about. And I also had a lot of hell realm visit stuff. It was, I remembered going into the astral or some space astrally or wherever, other dimensionally. And it was just black. It was black, black, black. And like some of these, I mean, I've had night terrors. You can say they're night terrors or they're hell realms or whatever it is that you want to call it. But this one was very particular when I was young, that I entered this black space that was like further than, I called it like further than something. Whatever I called the astral, it was farther than that or further than that. Completely black. And all I could hear were screams and cries of children. And the way that I described it when I was trying to describe it to my mom was that it sounded like they were so hungry. They were starving hungry, like starving hungry to the death point. And I walked in with a pizza and they all wanted a piece of pizza. So they were screaming for this thing. So it was like, it sounded like that, like how you would imagine that. And there was just screams and cries, and there was nothing that I could do. And I didn't even know where they were or how to get to anybody.
So you weren't seeing the children or anything. Everything is just black.
Yeah.
But you're hearing them. Now, do you feel like you were intentionally going there for some kind of reason? Or were you just winding up there and you didn't know how you got there? Or
I'm not exactly sure what the purpose was, aside from maybe sparking something to understand, because there was a certain level of compassion that I was tapping into. And being able to be compassionate and not being able to do anything about it, it tests some boundaries around your humanness and your soul. That's what I feel like.
And yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to phantom this whole thing. It's like if you walk into a room that's pitch black and kids are crying and screaming, and no matter what way you walk, you can't find them. I mean, this is just mind blowing.
It does almost seem like a peculiarly like torturous. Now, the energy that you were feeling when you're in there now, because maybe that could shed some kind of light on why you were in that realm. Was it sort of, was there sadness? Were you exuding love for these children, or like, is it perhaps possible that, like you said earlier, about sort of being a beacon and sort of through sympathetic resonance, sort of affecting other people's energy, however subtly. I don't know.
So what I can say is I didn't feel afraid. I felt safe within myself. So it may have been that I had, a presence keeping me safe. I don't know, but I felt safe. So, and I felt a lot of empathy and compassion. There was a lot of sadness, but it wasn't like I just felt a little bit helpless, that I wanted so desperately to help, but I couldn't because I didn't know how.
And Jim, this is kind of it seems to me, every time that I talk to somebody about this kind of thing, it's like when someone says they're in a room and these ETs are showing them different pictures, they're getting their emotions, things of that nature. Is that about what that sounds like to you?
Maybe that's another possibility. I didn't think of that myself. I didn't think of it more on like an experimental sort of thing. I know some abduction researchers believe that a lot of the stream memories that abductees go through are to kind of get an emotional response from the subject and to do whatever with that information. I don't know, for research or whatever. I don't know. I mean, this is peculiar. I mean, it's peculiar that, it seems like this is a lower astral realm, what Christians would describe as hell, these sort of lower dense planes populated by just children. It is strange. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of a realm like that. I think there has been experiencers and NDE experiencers who have been in similar realms where it's like pitch black, and I think there's some precedent for places like that.
Nicole, what do you hypothesize with this? I mean, what kind of explain to us what you think this might be?
Well, I mean, I was a child at the time. So what does a child relate to as other children? And, there's that part of it where if it was some kind of test to see like what the emotional response is, it could be. It could very well be. I mean, I remember having another one of those dreams or whatever you want to call it, where I was swimming in the pool and this black blob covered the top. So when I came to come up for air, I couldn't get through. And so I was like trying and trying and trying, and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't breathe. And I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. So I was completely wet. Like I just got out of a pool and couldn't breathe and, was terrified. So, maybe it was, maybe there were these different tests to see how do you react. If, are you going to be scared and try to run off because, you hear these screams in the dark. But, if you're a compassionate natured person, you want to help. So maybe it's that is, what is she going to do in these situations?
Yeah, and that's interesting because some people will say, that they were seeing end of the world type of imagery that they were showing to them to see what their reaction would be, or they would start from like the beginnings of your stages of life from infancy on through to get these reactions. So it's very, very interesting.
In my adulthood, like when I was a young adult, around like 20, 18, 19, 20 years old, I had a series of night terrors, and like those dreams, they don't go away. You remember a lot of details around them. They have a very occultish, or at least for me, they had a very occultish spin on them. And then I had night terrors it was the same night terror for about 5 years. And it was almost nightly. I think it was nightly. I just didn't remember all of them, but I would wake up screaming, no, 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 and writhing and trying to get out from this. And it started out, it was pitch black. And that's all that I could see. And that's it. And I just knew certain things were happening. And that I was like bound. And over the course of time, this dream unfolded very, very slowly until it was very clear what was happening, that I was pretty much on like some kind of sacrificial slab. I was bound by the wrists and the ankles and in like a starfish form. I had a male figure at each one of my limbs. And then at the end of it, there was kind of some kind of sensation or feeling like there was something that I agreed to, but then not that kind of thing at the end. And that's right about the time where like Baphomet would appear before me. And I'd be like screaming and writhing and saying, no, 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 and trying to get loose, where I would wake up screaming. But over the course of the time, it was this weird sensation of like wanting to know what this dream was, wanting to see more of the dream, but not wanting to see more of the dream. But once I uncovered more of that dream and then decided to switch my career from and leave the finance world. Once I did that, so there was a purpose in that dream that was warning me of like, if you continue down this path, you're not in alignment with your purpose. So me leaving immediately ended those dreams.
That's interesting because I was starting to think that that this could be a case of, energy harvesting. I think that's why entities manipulate dreams like they do, and why maybe kids have nightmares as often as they do. And there's entities that are orchestrating dreams to generate fear in the individual so that they can basically suck up that negative energy.
It's possible. When I was a kid, we had some stowaways in the house, so to speak, energetic stowaways. Yeah.
Now, have you ever really explored the possibility of abduction in relation to any of these contact experiences? given my research into abduction, the moments in your childhood where you're seeing craft outside the window could, to me, very much indicate that an abduction happened at those times. A lot of times, when people get regressions and they go back to a point where in their memory it was just that they had seen a craft, out the window or somewhere, they get regressed, and then they find out that, they were actually taken. There was this whole sort of experience and missing time episode that was uncovered. So were there any of the indications of abduction potentially? I mean, have you ever had missing time or marks on the body, scoop marks, any kind of strange marks on the body? A lot of abductees, have a fear of hospital environments, weird phobias with needles and lying on a hospital table, phobias of night in general. Occasions where you're not accounted for, where you should be in bed, another family member might notice that you're absent, and no one understands where you went. Is there anything like this in your childhood, or?
Yeah, there definitely is, like, time loss stuff. I could be out like all day long, and it seems like an hour kind of thing. I used to play way in the back. I was the nature girl, so I used to go way out in the back. We had a little pond and creek that went behind the houses. Lots of woods, and I'd play back there with my friends, not physical friends, but I would play, like, I had to, it kind of was like those little obstacle courses where I had to, hurry up and get to this spot by this time. And, it was almost like I could see this round panel of lights and like little glyphs or something, different colors that had to like create the right combination to get onto the little platform. And, then I'd be able to go home, kind of thing. So it was like that kind of game. And then when it came to like later, when all that stuff was happening with that spirit, we'll say, there were times, like, aside from the obstacle course stuff, there were times where I would be in the craft. One particular time, I actually was looking from some area. I want to say a corner, but like from one spot, like the vantage point was like I was looking off to the side, across the room or whatever, across the space. And it was me that was on the table. There was a lot of like white, brilliant energy around the table. They were all like working on me. There were other times where I remembered being somewhere craft like, and I remembered hearing like, oh, she's a good breeder, that kind of thing. So I don't know if, and I would have instances where I'd miss periods and like all of that stuff, and then get them, and I didn't really ever have cramping.
Any phantom pregnancies, periods where you thought you were pregnant and then suddenly you weren't pregnant?
Mine were like if I missed a period for like a month or two, but then if I like by the time I would take a test, there would be negative, and it would be I'd get the period like right away. So it was weird. And my sister had maybe a little bit more of that too, if I remember properly. Like she always seemed to have like these weird pregnancies, like pregnant, and then I think she had said something about like so many miscarriages, but early miscarriages.
Which is
Kind of.
typical. Okay, so yeah, probable abductions happening, and potentially breeding program, unless that's an anchor, unless those messages that were given to you about, she's a good breeder. You never know when the things that they say are an attempt to sort of mislead you to think that it's this when it might be something different.
And that could be the reason for the dark room with all the kids crying and screaming. I don't know. It's kind of
like in a symbolic sense.
Yeah, because you're talking about has she had any pregnancy things, and then almost like a breeding program where they're taking children, and she was in a room and heard all these children. So I'm just trying to, as a layperson, trying to put this together here. So I really don't know. I'm just going by what's coming to my head.
So I wonder, one of the things to sort out is with any abductee. I mean, this should be one of the questions that should come up: is it my labs or is it ET, or both? It can be both. What are some of the contact experiences you have where you've actually seen an ET? Can you go into any of that?
Yeah. So I've seen after the near-death experience, especially, I saw the mantids. It was kind of like I saw I just called them my spiritual guides. So one of them was a mantis doctor. I'd call him the doctor because he was the medical professional. That's how I put it. It was a gold white mantis, and then
now just to linger on the appearance for a moment. So many people describe the mantis beings as not exactly like an insect, kind of humanoid in shape. Regular hips, legs, 2 arms. But yet the face is eyes are taking up like sometimes 2/3, a third to 2/3 of the head, very large eyes.
To look something like this one?
Yeah, this one looks a little creepier.
I don't have any more creepier than that. Okay, but I get you. I totally get you.
I always felt safe around that one. And maybe, so I was a kid who used to find praying mantises in my backyard all the time growing up. So I would play with them. So praying mantises are part of like my world. So I always had a love for them. And I actually would hatch them, raise them, and breed them. So for a little while, there were several years that I did that. My mom hated coming over my house because when they would hatch, there would be little mantids all over the house, all over the all over the curtains. They looked like little mosquitoes. They were about that big when they hatched, so they'd be everywhere. But so the mantids and Arcturians and like Pleiadians. I've seen reptilians. I've seen reptilians in the physical, like the weird eye flicks and like a quick flash.
Well,
I've
let's
seen
let's unpack that experience. So when did this happen? You're talking about in the flesh. What led up to it? What was the nature of that experience and all the details?
that was a little after. Hang on. There were several things with the reptilians. So once, I'm going to say 2007, I want to say 2007. There was one where my husband at the time, he woke up. Like I had a dream that two of my kids also had a dream with the same elements in. We just had the different vantage points of each of us. And my ex-husband had woken up with a gray-like creature at the foot of the bed. He got all freaked out. Around the same time, I was dealing more with, I call them Temurians because that's the name that they gave as like something around Tamu. So I just called them the Temurians, and they were very energetic beings, and it has like more of this orange color. So I had drawn them out, like crepa them out, one of them. So I have that somewhere. I just moved, so everything's packed.
And this is a non-physical, luminescent type being. And you've seen these on a regular basis, or you've had multiple
I
contacts?
had a multiple instances with them, and very helpful, very
Spiritual.
very spiritual, very connected, very connected consciously, for the betterment of, so they seem like smaller. So they're not like these big, tall things, but they feel like they're like, if they give them a physical form, like I saw them in what they would have as a physical form, and it feels like they're smaller. Very soft and kind. The Arcturians are the ones that showed me the way that I help heal, facilitate healing. So it's a very...
Now, when you're seeing these beings, are these in out-of-body states when you're in the astral, or these ones in the flesh?
The Temurians I would see regular. So it was more like a feeling the presence and being able to see in the mind's eye and telepathically speaking. The mantis and the Arcturians were always in a meditative, aware state. The Pleiadians, same thing. And the reptilians was various ways, because I feel like I was shown different things by my guides where I was shielded from being seen, but were shown things for certain information. So on the reptilian side of things, there are different looks that they have, and it kind of is associated with their ranking.
Mm-hmm. I've heard this, yeah. I've heard some have wings. I've heard some have odd sort of horn structures, bony structures on their head. What's that?
And the like tentacles.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah. And you said that one of these experiences, or at least one of these experiences, was in the physical. Was there some kind of, what was the circumstance of that?
Yeah, so a few times I've seen this happen. So the first time that I saw it happen, it was right around the time that meteor stuff was happening. And I was actually at work, and it was somebody that I didn't recognize as an employee, but was dressed as an employee. So whether it was or it wasn't, it doesn't matter. But this person was never in my part of the building. We had 7 different buildings, and so like you had so many people occupying one space, and people don't really belong in really other buildings necessarily, especially like whatever work that they're doing. So I had was passing to go into one of my offices, and this person was just kind of standing there. And when I looked at him, I saw the eyes thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which has been reported, FYI, by many people. This
okay.
Phenomenon. Just for the audience's sake, this is something that people notice. Yeah.
So the eye flicker thing happened, and I kind of a little bit reacted, I guess. Like I kind of was like, oh, like what the?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did that, then the countenance completely changed and wasn't very friendly and took off. And
The countenance, the facial expression and demeanor
yeah,
of the person.
yeah, absolutely.
And the eyes, when they flashed, were they, just to describe them a little bit, vertical slits, like reptile-like eyes?
Yeah, it did this with the eye, like this, and it was like completely black.
Yeah, so David Icke, for instance, is someone who has had one of these experiences with, I believe it was a British Prime Minister who was getting ready to go on a news station, and they were sort of in the same room, sort of getting ready for this. David Icke was also going to go on the news. He was reporting the news then, and witnessed this happen with this British Prime Minister. His eyes changed real fast, and this sort of reptile-like appearance come through briefly.
Yeah.
And then there's a celebrity also. There's a video, I can't remember who this was exactly, that has made a serious claim of seeing this happen.
Yeah. It's almost like when that happens, if they recognize that that you are aware of it, they try to instill like this level of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got from that, because it happened another time after that somewhere else, and it was kind of brushed under the rug because I didn't react. When I saw it, I didn't react. I just went out about my business and like didn't say anything, and everything was cool. But it seemed like that first time when I reacted and was like, oh, and then it realized, oh, she knows. Then it tried to, like, with that countenance change, the energy shift, it felt like it was trying to attack me with some kind of energy to create fear.
Which is, very characteristic of those beings. And so this wasn't just happenstance that, you encountered this person, in your workplace, given your history and your identity, as an experiencer and having ET contact. That wasn't random, of course, that was intentional.
I'm sure.
And and as to why, who knows, but I'm sure it wasn't random.
Yeah, very interesting. I I know we pushed you very deep here into this, and again, I'm very grateful, and I just I sometimes I just get lost. I'm listening and I'm like, wow, the things that you've experienced, and you haven't told anybody about any of this. Is there going to be something down the line for a regression to try to bring it all forward and put this out in a memoir or a book?
I would love to do that. Yeah, I would really love to do that. So I'll say I'd love to do it. As far as time to do it and writing it up and all that, we'll see what happens.
Well, that should definitely be on your list of things to do, because it's so fascinating, this whole subject, and the correlations between each different thing, and how you could literally go from one rabbit hole to another trying to figure this out. And but yeah, putting it all into choreographic,
Chronological order.
yes, chronological, yes. That right there is I am definitely, you have me hooked on this whole thing now. So, and I wasn't sure how this was going to play out, so I was just like, now I'm extremely intrigued, and I could probably talk to you for hours on this subject, trying to break it down even farther.
Yeah, probably. There's certain things that I had shared with, very close friends, whether it was at the time or friends that I still have now. And there's a lot. There definitely is a lot. And I feel like, once you have one near-death experience, you have a ton. I mean, I had one when I was a kid. Like, I was sucked into the undertow kind of thing. And I think from that point forward, it was forget it. That there's just one thing after another. And whether it's ET contact or near-death experiences, I know, like, every time I go for surgery, I'm going to have a near-death experience. I know, like, certain things. I also hear, like, if you do this or you continue this, then this is what's going to happen. So there are different things that happen in my life that I won't tell anyone, because if I tell them, then I give up the power of creating what I want. And then I'm at the mercy of co-creating with someone. And if their fears are greater than what I'm putting out there, then forget it. Now I'm going to have to work twice as hard to do it. So I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Tony's coming on in.
and yeah, I can see the tail. and yeah, it is trying to figure out what the meanings are. Sometimes I don't believe we're supposed to.
Sometimes we're not, maybe not.
Yeah, it's just one of those that it's a learning experience for some reason, but trying to decipher it is extremely difficult.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think with most contact experiences cases, we're just not going to completely solve it. And you just absolutely have to just reconcile with that fact. And just, I think at some point, once we get out of the physical, we may get the answers then. But yeah, to me, with a lot of these experiences, I mean, it kind of feels like we're chimpanzees trying to figure out calculus or something, Not that we shouldn't crack away at it, though, and try to sort of make sense of this. I think we can, to some degree. What about synchronicity in your life? And has there been synchronicity that has been, interspersed through all of this? And so,
all the time. There's always synchronicity. Yeah.
And do derive a lot of meaning from it, and does it bring answers? Like for me, synchronicity is not just simply, seeing 1111, like I feel like I've been able to develop it to the point where like a lot of information comes through those channels, surprisingly, so long as you sort of develop the tools to interpret it.
Yeah, synchronicity, I think, is much deeper than that as well. And it's there's a lot of things that if this didn't happen and that didn't happen and this didn't happen, then I wouldn't be here. And that all those things had to happen for me to be able to really understand what's happening right now, kind of stuff. There's a lot of that where, sometimes I'd be like, why is this happening? Okay, I'm just surrendering it. And then fast forward, it's, oh, that's why that had to happen. Because had that not happened, all this wouldn't happen and wouldn't bring me here for this really cool thing to happen. So there's a lot of that. And even there's just so much. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. And Jim, we was just talking about Opus for whatever reason. We was discussing Opus. I don't even remember why. and it was so weird because just this, Jim, you explain that real quick.
Well, so maybe you can, because I can't even remember what that was, the organization that Linda Moulton Howe was a part of.
Yes.
So we were just talking about it, and then all of a sudden, I see the word Opus while I'm at work, sort of inscribed on this medication tray thing. Within minutes, probably within, like not more than an hour, it was probably less than an hour that had passed, and I'm all of a sudden, witnessing that word. And so, when that happens, I don't think it's just, I think you should look into synchronicities like that, maybe there's something about Opus,
what was it about Opus?
We need to look that
and then,
up.
And
Are
then
you talking about the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support?
Yes.
That Opus with Lester Velez. I actually interviewed him on my podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, no, we was talking about that and Linda Howe and whatever reason, this little piece of plastic is like a divider, had the same name on it, and I'm like, whoa, what does it mean? Was we supposed to be talking about that or what?
Right. And I think we were talking about you, like in the same conversation, and you've interviewed this person, so, and that's so typical. Yeah. With synchronicity. And it's so essential too, especially, if you're an experiencer and you're just having this just chaos of experiences, that you can't make sense out of. But if synchronicity is sort of present, it's at the very least sort of giving you this reassurance that, don't worry, everything, is happening as it should. All these experiences are necessary. You can't escape, the purpose and intent and meaning of the universe, no matter how dark it is, even if my labs is involved in this, it is happening precisely as it should, in my opinion. Anyway, yeah. I guess maybe we should wrap it up then, Todd. And maybe for our audience, could you just give us a little bit, what's maybe like the sort of core teaching, that you think is the most important, that you could share with us, maybe as a kind of positive
End note.
fun end note.
Let's see. I'm just gonna kind of tap into the audience right now, because I really feel like first of all, when we gain more and more awareness of who we are, we lose sight of what judgment actually is and can do to us, right? So you step outside of that judgment zone for other people, as well as any judgment that can be cast on you. So I think that's one of the most important things, is really understanding your own self and having the awareness of your own behaviors, how you act, the reality that you've created. So looking at things, and when we don't like certain things in there, it's also a reflection of what is it that might be easily changed within ourselves in order to shift that, because that's always what it comes down to. And that you have all the resources that you need, and it's about taking action on that. So if there's something that you're feeling that maybe you don't want to be feeling, if there's something that you want to do that you don't know how to do, it's just about taking the right actions. So tap into your inner strengths, tap into your skills and the resources that you have within, and just start shifting somewhere, because a small shift always ripples out, not just to you, but to the people around you. So even still, people sometimes they want the change, and then they fear the change. They're afraid of what the change is going to bring, and they're usually afraid that it's going to bring them exactly what they really want. But the reality is, you get what you get because you're creating it, and that's what you're settling for. So don't settle. Go after what you really want, because we are here to experience. So what experience would you like?
Yeah, and that's why you are the empowerment alchemist, because you can literally, your thoughts can hold you back.
Always.
Yeah, and myself, I know, like, I'm my own worst critic, and I'll tell myself, oh, I'm no good and this and that. But really, if I just shifted a little bit and be like, you know what, I can do it, and I'm just going to show everybody that I can do it. You know what I
So
mean?
easy. The
Yeah.
thing is, it's so easy to start that shift, and it's so easy to even delve deep and get rid of big, huge things. I mean, I've had miraculous happenings, or seemingly miraculous happenings, because you create it, and it's so much fun to watch somebody go from this feeling desperate and being in this deep, dark place, and then having this light bulb go off in the matter of a session. And it's like, or a group transformation session. Those are the best, because it's so fun, because everybody's in there, all these weird spaces. And then you bring people, this whole group, through an experience. And then I just wait, because at the end of the experience, it's one thing. People feel like, okay, well, what now? And then I'm like, ooh, let's wait 3 days. And then I get the love notes.
And it's so easy for someone to get in that rut and stay in that rut for whatever reason. I don't know if it's self-doubt or what it is, but you can get in that rut, and that can be like, whew, you can stay in that rut.
It's a
So
loop.
you get just that little bit of mindset, that change makes the world a difference, because once you start seeing things maybe more positively, then life around you is going to become more positive.
Yeah, it's the main thing is, and a lot of people don't realize that. I'm going to go back to Tesla, because, I love him. And it's so true that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And all you have to do is shift your vibration just a little bit, and then a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, based on what you want. But if you shift it just a little bit, you're going to create a change that creates a ripple in your life. And once you start, and once you get to a certain point where you're like, oh my God, I can easily create this stuff. And it's like, it just becomes your reality that, oh, I don't like this. Well, let's shift it. Let's do that. Let's do something else instead. And yes, sometimes there's a process that goes with that. And you go through those little mini existential crises, and because that's part of the alchemy process. So going through all the things to grow and change, and like it's the metamorphosis. So sometimes you feel like you're liquidated a little bit in that chrysalis of yours, and then you pull yourself back together and you emerge, and then you do it all over again. It's just, I liken it to diving boards. You finally get to go on the diving board. What do? You jump off and you go in. And then once you start diving in, guess what you're doing? The next step that you're taking, when you dive off, you're diving deeper. So it's not like you're battling the same thing over and over again. Sometimes you're just uncovering things at a much deeper layer than what you did before. That's why it's coming back around. So you'll either experience the same thing over and over again, and that's it coming back around to bite you. But when you do some work and you release some stuff, and then it comes back up years later, like, I thought I got rid of this. Well, maybe not to that level. So maybe you had some deep roots in there and they're starting to grow back, and now you're feeling it, you're diving deeper. Well, you're digging that stuff up to get it out. So I think a lot of people feel like they're slipping back and sliding backwards, when in reality, it's more like a Mercury retrograde. You're still moving forward. You just think you're moving back. You just, from your vantage point, it looks like it's moving backward a little. But usually when I walk people through that and they say, oh, I don't know if this worked. And then I ask a few questions and they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I am way ahead of that. It just feels like as you acclimate to it, you're ready for the next step. So you're launching again. So sometimes people think, oh, because sometimes why? You got to like take a few steps back so you can run forward. It's like the tide. So
Yeah,
if people hold on to that you don't give yourself enough credit. Give yourself more credit.
Now, Nicole, if people want to find you on the web, take a look at your empowerment websites, and I know you have programs on there too. I did see some programs, things like that. Mm-hmm. Where can they find you at?
So for my programs, you can find me at NicoleMajik.com, and my main website is MajikLLC.com. And anybody that's looking to just book a session or check out what I have available aside from NicoleMajik.com, you can find me at NicoleMajik.as.me is my acuity scheduler. Very good.
Very good. And, you know, I think I do have all your links on the page as well. Nicole, I'd like to thank you so very much for sharing your experiences with us. I am very honored that you agreed to do this. I love learning about people, and especially with their experiences. I think that this, to me, it was a very good show because of that. Jim, you have anything you would like to add to that?
No, I think we'll just, being that we're over 2 hours, I guess we'll just wrap it up here.
All right. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you so much again. And I tell you, I would love to have you back on again.
I know we didn't talk about that other NDE with the shared experience. So yes, we can probably do that. I know it takes up a lot of time to talk about all these things, but we talked about a lot today. So your listeners need to like assimilate. They need some processing time.
I need this. Yes, and I want to thank all our listeners and viewers that were here tonight and checking us out. And we can't wait to have her on again and see what more she has to say. Except we'll only go into your NDE shared, and then I want to talk about empowerment.
All right, that sounds good.
So yes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.